Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel, also known as Yatuza with D&B Academy, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a track like the ones on grid recordings. So without further ado, let's get into the program. Okay, so before we get started, all of the samples that you are listening to are available on the dnbacademy.net website. And the samples that I have used today are the Bass Brothers sample packs and some of the breaks from the Molecular sample pack. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and show you the track that we are going to be going through today. And this is what that sounds like.
Die. I would.
Cool, so the first thing that we're going to get into are going to be the drums. I've got the drums separated into two groups here. One is the tops loop, which contains all the hi-hats, and the drums, which is the kick and the snare. Okay, and as you can see, I only have the kick as one layer, and the snare has two layers here. So the kick actually has no processing, it's actually straight out of the sample pack. And the snare has two layers onto it. So one is the clap layer, and the other one is the snare layer. Let me go ahead and see if I pitch this up. Okay, so I did. The snare is pitched up 11 semitones, and the clap is pitched up 4 semitones. And on this group where I've got the kick and the snare, I have the image line wave shaper that's actually quite cranked up, and this also comes in with a clipper. So it's clipping the signal right after I wave shape it. So let me go ahead and show you what the drums sound like without the wave shaper. And I will turn the wave shaper on. Sometimes I do put a transient shaper right before the wave shaper, but I felt like this was good enough. Okay, so let's move on to the hi-hats here. Okay, so this is the hi-hat that I pitched up 6 semitones. Okay, so you can see here that I pitched this one up 6 semitones, and then for the one that comes in on the third beat, it's actually pitched up 4 semitones. So this is what the drum kit sounds like, including the tops and the kick and the snare. Okay, and on the drum kit bus layer, as you can see, I do have some hybrid reverb and an auto filter. This is just bringing the drum kit in on the intro. As you can hear, the drum kit is filtered on the intro bit. And I do have the snare playing on a different pattern, so instead of having the standard drum and bass pattern here, I have it so that the snare is actually coming in, as you can see here, where the kick usually does on the 2-step beat. And then I have another tops loop on top of it that I've chosen off of the Bass Brothers sample pack here, and I've repeated it at a certain spot where I've liked it. And so I've changed this loop so it's a bit more different than the original one. Let me go ahead and show you what the original loop sounds like. And this is what the main drum loop sounds like with that second top player. Cool. So let's move on to the basses now. For the basses, I've also chosen them off of the guest sample pack, but I've chucked them into a sampler, and then I've chosen the notes where I want them to play, and I modified it and made some post-processing. So we're going to go ahead and review that. Let me go ahead and show you what the basses sound like without the sidechain. Okay, so let's hop into the first bass. The first bass I've made from the guest bass number 20. And I've checked this into a sampler. I believe it's just the first bit right here. It's the note of E. And I've made a pitch envelope onto it. The peak at minus 12%, the sustain at minus 5.1%, and the end of the pitch envelope at minus 100%. 47.5 milliseconds, and the release of 4.68, with the amount being -7 semitones. The filter is off, and I'm not using any of this, so you can disregard that. And then I just duplicated the layer. So the same thing is going on in here inside the sampler. I've just gone and chucked in a thermal VST. And inside thermal, I've just gone through the presets here and chosen animated flux. You can play around with the bubble lasers here and the frequency animation, but I've just gone with a straight out of the box preset. And then I filtered out any of the low end and added some dynamic tube here. So the output for the dynamic tube, I have it at 2.62 and the drive of 5.24 dB, along with the tone at 0.35, the envelope at 133%, and I believe I didn't change the attack and release at all. Okay, so this is one of the more simple basses that I have here. I'm just playing a note on it, and I've got it layered with the same instance of itself, just filtered out with a bit more of a distortion. And let's move on to the main bass. So for the main bass, there's a bit more going on. And I've modified the sample start and the sample end, along with added a crossfade, so that every time that it repeats, there's no clicking sound. And this is what's generating that constant wobble effect. I've also added 10 dB on here, made sure that the root note is matching the note of the sample that I'm using. And this is how I've chosen to loop the bass at a certain place where it kind of loops seamlessly and it creates this wobble effect. Let me turn off the filter here. That's just generating a bit of slight movement at the end of each bar. So you can hear it has very little clicks, and you can also clean this up with the filter here that I've got it added. But I chose to actually make it glide a bit in between the notes, and so you got to come over here to this section and press glide, and I have it over at 392 milliseconds. I've also added a pitch envelope here that goes down to -7 semitones, with the peak at -53%, sustain at -22, and the end of the pitch envelope at -100%. The attack, I've got it at 0.45, the decay at 60 seconds, and the release at 67.5 milliseconds. Apart from that, I'm pretty sure I'm not using this oscillator bit here. So I'm just using the pitch envelope and the glide here. And I've duplicated the same instance of the bass, but I've just post-processed it a bit different. The pitch decay and the pitch envelope is the same, the glide settings are the same, It's just a duplicated instance of the sampler, but I've just gone ahead and added an erosion, some auto filter, and I have a saturator here at the end that's adding all that overtone to the sound. So let's hear it without the saturator. As you can hear, it's very quiet. So with the saturator, I brought it up 8.57 dB. I've added the DC filter on, and I messed with the bass here. So I have it at negative 5.71 with the frequency at 961 hertz and the width at around 40%, and with the depth parameter set at 7.62. I also have the soft clipping turned on so that any of the peaks don't go above 0. So that's it for the main bass. Main trick here on the main bass is the looping back and forth inside the sampler of the sample that you choose, so that it sounds different from the original sample inside of the pack. And you can get really creative this way and choose a lot of variations. So it's a great method to stray away from that bass loop that is inside of the pack and kind of personalize it as your own. Okay, so let's move on to the third bass here. And I believe this one doesn't have any post-processing at all. I've just chosen a place on the sample here where I thought it would fit best inside of the main bass riffs. And I believe it's just the very beginning of the bass loop here from the pack. Yeah, so I've just liked that one shot here, and I felt that it complements the main bass riff a lot. So let's just hear them all in context so that you can have an idea of what it sounds like. Just a cheeky little one-shot bass that kind of pushes the main bass riff to roll on a bit more. And then for the fourth bass, this is more of a filler bass here. And it's the same bass that I'm using for bass 1 and 2. I've just got it so that it starts at a different place inside of the bass loop. And I've played a different note with it. And this is just playing an octave up. So this is E3 and this is E2. What's happening is that it is getting pitch modulated. So when you play a higher note, it seems like the rate of the LFO increases on the sample, on the bass. And I've got it just with a thermal here. And the thermal is set to the Fat Sliders preset. And I believe I've just chosen it as default. I haven't changed anything on it. So yeah, I mean, this is it for the main bass. I believe that this is quite close to the vibe on the grid recordings right now. Before we move on, I did want to show you the notes that I'm using for the main bass before I forget. So I'm going to go ahead and press fold here, and you can go ahead and check that out. Okay, so these are the notes for the main bass. It's F, E, B, and then it goes back to the F and the E pattern here. Just wanted to clarify that on the last notes here, I have it with a pitch bend, pitch envelope. So on the MIDI control, I have it going down on these notes, on the B, and on the last F and the E. So this is what's generating that lower note here. As you can see, it's F and the E, but I have it almost to the limit of where you can actually pitch it down to. And then I have it go back up at the end here so that it doesn't stay at that pitch. So now we can move on to the intro. Let me show you how I've incorporated these basses onto the intro to kind of tease them in. So I've resampled the main bass bus that I have here. And this is what I have going at this layer right here. So as you can see, I've just resampled all of the basses. And I have it so that where the sub goes down into those lower notes, I'm going to bring that into the intro so that it teases the main bass, but it doesn't fully reveal all of the notes that I've used into the main bass riff. For the other bit, I have just looped it where the higher note comes in, and I've duplicated it, but I've faded those parts of the loop into each other so that there's no clicking. As you can see here, Ableton lets you fade sample into the other one, and this allowed me to create the seamless loop so that the samples don't generate a clicking sound every time that they repeat. And then I have it with the bandpass filter and the resonance at 47%. Then with the auto filter at the end, just cutting out any of the low end. And I've got thermal on it as well with the distant shapes preset. So that would be it for the intro bass. Let's move on to the melodic and effects samples that I've used here. And the first one is this Reese stab that I've chosen to filter in. Cool. So for this one, I have a washout put onto it. I believe this is a free washout that you can find. It's called Bass Clef Easy Washout. You can search for that on Google. I'm sure you will find it quite easily. And the main post-processing that I have on this sample here is the Echo Boy, just adding some more stereo width. And so I have the auto filter here automated so that it is gradually opening up, and then when it comes back in within the drop, the filter is actually turned off, or it is all the way open. And then the vocal sample, I've just got it off a YouTube video, and the other sample that you can hear here in the effects, it's just an applause, it's just a Foley sample that I've also found on the internet. All the other samples are part of the D&B Academy sample packs that you can find on our website. And I've just got a standard effects hit here that I've chosen off the pack that I liked. And I want to show you the break because I also have a bandpass filter on this that is automated. So just the same thing here. I've got it so that the bandpass filter is automating from a low point up to a high point of the cutoff filter. Then I have an EQA here, just cutting out all the low end, and a glue compressor with the soft clipping turned on. And apart from that, I also have a pad that I've chosen here, but I have it opening up every time that the kick comes through. So I have a side chain. So that it reacts like a gate. And I've got the hybrid reverb automated so that it is fully wet and then it just becomes dry. So as you can hear, every time the kick comes through, more of the pad comes through as well. And then I have this is a cool plugin just to make risers out of anything or effect. And I have it on the thin air preset, and I'm automating the freeze parameter. So as you can see here, I just have it so that it is freezing near the drop here, and then when it comes back in during the drop. And this is another washout, just like the bass clef one, except this one's a free one, and this is a paid plugin. But that would be it for today's tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed this how-to and this breakdown on how to make tracks like the ones on Grid Recordings. Again, my name is Emmanuel, also known as Yatuza with DB Academy, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. And thanks for watching.
A creature like that, how would it ever die? I would.